What I mean by the idea of justice is that I have lived an experience that shows me that justice, no matter how much determinism comes in, how many forces can be measured by science or elaborated by philosophy, it doesn't seem to me that justice truly exists except for those that live by their own justifications. And this is not to say that the idea of justice is bad. I'm just saying that in order for someone to have justice in their life, they determine a prime cause. And that prime cause informs everything. So, for instance, God. It could be the Christian God, could be the Protestant God, could be the Jewish God. But Joseph Campbell made it very clear that there are some people that are classicalists, I don't know. And there are those that are comparativists, where they compare. And the classicalists, I don't even know if that's a word. They won't compare. So their God is the only God, and all the others are devils, so to say. Whereas I come from a point that it's a matter of perspective, and if you're born into it, sure, you're going to take that as your primary thing that you identify with. But this also comes in direct relationship with justice, in that what are you justified? What do you do with your life, and what kind of conflicts do you confront, and how do you resolve those conflicts? And I look at the world and I see some people resolving conflicts in an idiotic way, but they're productive. They care very little for the consequences. In fact, it's sort of the mentality, let God sort out the dead kind of thing. I'm going to do what I do and let God sort out the rest of it. And then there's all kinds of justifications that come in to resolve inner conflict and all this stuff. So I had to cover these ideas because I'm really observing through my studies, going over them and over them. It's been very difficult for me. It's taken not very difficult, it's been very enjoyable, but I've had to go over it and over it and over it to really try and grasp this idea of the transparency in the forms of things to see the transcendent image, the informing image. And this is also, I feel, linked to metaphor, being able to understand the metaphor. So on the surface, it's such and such, but the meaning behind it is so and so. And one of the key things that I tapped into recently and was thinking about, and I had to record it, was that there were these hunter-gatherers, and then there were these agriculturalists. And the typical masculine stance and posture generally speaking, is related to the hunter-gatherer stance and posture. And the feminine, the typical feminine in general, is the agriculturalist mentality. And that with the hunter-gatherer, there needed to be something that a term that I ran across in Campbell, an indomitable individualism. You had to be very courageous to take the risk to go out and go toe-to-toe with a wild beast. Whereas in an agricultural state, where you're planting all of these crops, everything is laid out for you exactly what you need to do, and everybody needs to get along with that program all day long. So the individuality really needs to be set aside so that this specific thing that is known already can be accomplished. And then I started thinking about how civilization develops, and this is related to Spengler and the talks of Ebert, and it seemed to me this the beginnings required a great deal of indomitable individualism. And then, once it got going, this indomitable individualism, this masculine kind of thing, needed to subside for this feminine kind of development, where it was a collective submission to the status quo. And the individuality basically had to develop in and through being completely immersed in all these relationships. And it can get really complex. And then a masculinity comes up, and it has to do with this neglect, and then addressing what has been neglected. And then the thing that was neglected behaves in a neglectful manner and takes more than its share. And then it has to be put back in its place and be neglected again. And it seems to be the kind of carrot and stick mentality that keeps going and going and going and creating this dynamism, this dynamo, where something is lacking, and the only way for survival is to address that very thing, but then that very thing becomes bigger than life, and then we have to squish it and knock it down a few notches so that another thing that's been neglected by the previous thing becoming bigger than its own britches. So that pretty much lays it out.